stepping into a cave that no human has entered for more than 11,000 years. Every footprint, every stone, every hidden chamber has remained untouched since the end of the Ice Age. What would you expect to find? Ancient tools? Lost civilizations? Impossible artifacts? Or evidence that history is far different from what we've been taught? Deep beneath the earth, archaeologists continue to uncover discoveries that challenge everything we thought we knew about our ancestors. Some finds have rewritten history. Others remain so mysterious that even modern science has no explanation. Today, we're descending into forgotten worlds where time stood still for thousands of years, and where every discovery raises even more terrifying questions than answers. Discovering a place where time simply stopped. A place where no footsteps echoed for 11,000 years. Where the last people to walk through its dark passages did so before the pyramids of Egypt existed. Before Stonehenge. Before the invention of writing itself. Deep beneath layers of rock, hidden from the world since the end of the last Ice Age, archaeologists uncovered a cave so perfectly preserved that it has forced scientists to question long-held assumptions about our distant past. Every footprint, every broken tool, every fragment of charcoal remained exactly where it had been left thousands of generations ago. But what they found inside wasn't merely a collection of ancient objects. It was a frozen moment in human history, one capable of rewriting everything we thought we knew about the people who survived one of Earth's harshest eras. And as researchers ventured deeper into the darkness, they realized this cave was guarding secrets that had waited over 11 millennia to be revealed. For archaeologists, untouched sites are extraordinarily rare. Every civilization leaves traces behind, but almost every important discovery has already been disturbed in one way or another. Ancient tombs have been looted. Cities have been rebuilt on top of older settlements. Even caves often become shelters for shepherds, explorers, or curious visitors over thousands of years. Truly untouched places are almost unheard of. That is why the discovery of this cave sent shockwaves through the archaeological world. Hidden behind a natural collapse near the end of the last Ice Age, its entrance disappeared beneath layers of rock, soil, and vegetation. Century after century, storms reshaped the landscape above while civilizations rose and fell without ever knowing that an entire chapter of human history remained sealed only a few meters below their feet. No one can say exactly when the entrance vanished. It may have happened after an earthquake, a landslide, or simply through thousands of years of natural erosion. Whatever caused it, the result was extraordinary. Nature had accidentally created the perfect vault, protecting everything inside from weather, sunlight, animals, and people. When modern researchers first detected unusual underground chambers during geological surveys, they suspected nothing more than another ordinary cave system. Similar formations exist all over the world. Most have already been explored, mapped, and documented. Few contain anything remarkable. But as excavation crews carefully removed the collapsed rock blocking the entrance, something immediately felt different. The air that escaped from the opening had been trapped for thousands of years. It carried a damp, earthy smell, unlike anything anyone on the team had experienced before. Dust floated silently through flashlight beams as researchers squeezed into a world that had remained hidden since mammoths still wandered across parts of Europe and North America. Unlike famous tourist caves illuminated with colorful lights and modern walkways, this place was untouched wilderness. Every step required caution. One careless movement could destroy evidence that had survived longer than recorded history itself. Almost immediately, they noticed something extraordinary. The cave floor appeared undisturbed. Normally, cave sediments are mixed by animals, floods, or later visitors. Here, however, delicate layers of soil remained perfectly preserved. Tiny footprints crossed sections of soft clay exactly as they had thousands of years earlier. Ash from ancient fires rested quietly beneath thin layers of mineral deposits. Stone tools lay abandoned where their owners had left them, untouched by human hands since prehistoric times. For archaeologists, this was equivalent to opening a sealed time capsule. Each object could reveal not only what early humans owned, but also precisely how they lived, worked, rested, and survived. As researchers advanced farther inside, the silence became almost overwhelming. Caves possess a unique kind of silence. It isn't simply the absence of sound. Instead, every breath, every footstep, every whispered conversation seems to disappear into endless darkness. Standing there, surrounded by walls that had witnessed humanity's earliest struggles for survival, many members of the team later described an almost surreal feeling, as though the cave itself was watching them. Then came another discovery. Near one chamber, archaeologists found traces of an ancient fireplace. Small fragments of charcoal remained preserved beneath mineral layers. Laboratory analysis would later reveal that these fires had burned approximately 11,000 years ago, during a time when Earth's climate was undergoing dramatic transformation. The Ice Age was ending. Massive glaciers that had covered huge portions of the northern hemisphere were retreating. Sea levels slowly began to rise. Entire ecosystems changed within only a few generations. Animals that had dominated the landscape for thousands of years started disappearing forever. For the people living during this period, survival demanded constant adaptation. They hunted different animals as climates shifted. They followed changing migration routes. Rivers moved. Forests expanded into former grasslands. Every generation inherited a world that looked different from the one their parents had known. The people who entered this cave lived through one of the greatest environmental transformations in human history. Yet one mystery immediately puzzled researchers. Why did they never return? Evidence suggested the cave had been occupied multiple times over many years. Stone blades showed signs of repeated sharpening. Animal bones carried cut marks left by skilled hunters. Fire pits had been rebuilt more than once. This wasn't a single accidental visit. It had clearly served an important purpose. Then, suddenly, all activity stopped. No later footprints appeared above the older layers. No newer fires had been lit. No additional tools were brought inside. It was as though an invisible line separated one moment in history from complete abandonment. Did the people leave because the climate changed? Were they forced away by rising waters, disease, conflict, or migrating animals? Or did something happen inside the cave itself? At present, nobody knows. That unanswered question continues to fuel new investigations every year. Even more intriguing were strange markings discovered on several rock surfaces. Unlike random scratches created by animals, these patterns appeared deliberate. Some consisted of repeating lines and geometric shapes. Others resembled abstract symbols whose meanings have long been forgotten. Were they maps? Spiritual symbols? Early attempts at communication? Or simply artistic expressions created during quiet moments beside ancient fires? Without written records, certainty remains impossible. Modern technology has transformed the way researchers investigate such discoveries. High-resolution laser scanners now record every millimeter of cave walls. Three-dimensional mapping allows scientists to digitally preserve fragile chambers before further excavation begins. Tiny samples of pollen, charcoal, and mineral deposits reveal changing climates, vegetation, and even seasonal patterns from thousands of years ago. Yet, despite all these remarkable tools, some mysteries stubbornly refuse to reveal their answers. Every new discovery inside the cave seems to create even more questions than it solves. And perhaps that is what makes places like this so captivating. Hidden beneath our feet are forgotten worlds that existed long before recorded history. Entire stories remain buried beneath stone and soil, waiting for someone to uncover them. Every sealed cave, abandoned tunnel, and unexplored chamber holds the possibility of changing our understanding of humanity forever. Because if one untouched cave could survive 11,000 years, who knows how many others are still waiting in the darkness? Long before humans built cities, raised monuments, or carved their stories into stone, they found shelter in places the earth had already prepared for them. Hidden beneath mountains, cliffs, and forests, caves became the first homes of humanity. They protected families from freezing winds, dangerous predators, and relentless storms. But they also did something far more remarkable. They preserved history in ways no palace, temple, or fortress ever could. Every layer of earth inside an untouched cave acts like the page of an ancient book, recording thousands of years without changing a single word. And when archaeologists began studying the newly discovered cave in greater detail, they realized they weren't simply excavating a shelter. They were reading one of the oldest surviving chapters of human history. Unlike open landscapes, caves change very slowly. Rain cannot easily wash away evidence hidden deep inside them. Powerful winds never disturb their floors. Sunlight cannot bleach bones or destroy ancient pigments. Even tiny fragments of charcoal can survive for thousands of years under the right conditions. In many ways, a sealed cave functions like a natural vault, protecting everything inside from the outside world. That is exactly what happened here. After the cave's entrance became blocked near the end of the last ice age, nature took over the role of guardian. Layer after layer of sediment quietly settled across the floor. Minerals dripping from the ceiling slowly sealed fragile remains beneath thin crusts of stone. Every passing century added another invisible layer of protection, preserving evidence that would otherwise have disappeared forever. To the untrained eye, the cave floor looked like nothing more than dirt and scattered rocks. But for archaeologists, every inch contained valuable information. Instead of rushing through the chambers, researchers worked centimeter by centimeter. Small brushes replaced large shovels. Fine dental tools gently removed grains of sediment surrounding delicate discoveries. Every object was photographed before it was touched. Every fragment was carefully mapped in three-dimensional space. The reason was simple. Its exact position could reveal just as much as the object itself. A broken spear point lying beside animal bones might indicate a successful hunt. A cluster of burned stones could reveal where people once gathered around a fire. Even tiny pieces of pollen trapped in ancient soil could tell scientists what kinds of plants grew outside the cave thousands of years ago. One of the first major discoveries came from something almost invisible. Scattered throughout the sediment were microscopic grains of pollen. At first glance, they appeared insignificant, but under powerful microscopes, they became one of the most valuable pieces of evidence in the entire cave. Every flowering plant produces pollen with a unique shape. By identifying these ancient grains, scientists reconstructed an environment that no longer exists. Forests had been spreading across regions once dominated by icy grasslands. Shrubs replaced frozen tundra. Rivers shifted course as glaciers melted. Entire ecosystems transformed within only a few centuries. The cave had silently recorded these dramatic environmental changes while remaining untouched. Then came another remarkable discovery. Embedded inside hardened soil were dozens of tiny footprints. Not all of them belonged to humans. Some had been left by wolves. Others appeared to belong to foxes, bears, and smaller mammals searching for shelter. Their tracks crossed ancient human footprints but never disturbed them completely. It painted an incredible picture of life during the closing years of the Ice Age. Humans and animals often occupied the same landscape, sometimes even the same cave, separated only by seasons or short periods of time. Every footprint became a frozen moment of behavior. Researchers could estimate the direction people walked, where they stopped, and even whether they were carrying heavy loads based on the depth of the impressions. In one chamber, a set of smaller footprints accompanied larger ones. Were they children walking beside adults? Perhaps an entire family entered the cave together. No one can say with certainty, but the possibility transforms these ancient impressions into something deeply human. For a brief moment, 11,000 years disappear. You are no longer looking at archaeological evidence. You are looking at someone's footsteps. Elsewhere inside the cave, researchers discovered carefully arranged animal bones. Many carried clean-cut marks made by sharp stone tools. These weren't random remains left behind by predators. They showed clear evidence of butchering. The people who visited this cave understood exactly how to process animals efficiently, separating meat, removing hides, and extracting nutritious bone marrow. Some bones displayed signs of burning. Others had been deliberately broken. Together, they revealed not only what these people hunted, but how they survived in an unpredictable world. Interestingly, not every animal found inside had been eaten. Several bones appeared to have been placed intentionally in isolated areas of the cave. Whether these represented ritual practices, symbolic behavior, or simply practical storage remains unknown. This uncertainty is what makes archaeology so fascinating. Objects rarely speak for themselves. Scientists must reconstruct entire stories from scattered clues, always careful not to confuse evidence with imagination. Another mystery appeared high on the cave walls. Using specialized lighting, researchers detected faint traces of reddish pigments almost invisible under normal conditions. The markings were badly faded, but enough remained to suggest deliberate painting. Unlike the spectacular cave art found in places such as France or Spain, these images were much simpler. Short lines, geometric patterns, perhaps abstract symbols. Yet simplicity does not make them less important. Some archaeologists believe such markings may have served practical purposes, marking pathways or recording seasonal information. Others think they carried spiritual meaning connected to ceremonies now lost forever. Without written language, their true purpose remains one of the cave's greatest mysteries. Modern science has introduced extraordinary tools to investigate these ancient spaces. Laser scanners create digital models accurate to fractions of a millimeter. Ground-penetrating radar reveals hidden chambers beyond solid rock. Radiocarbon dating measures the age of charcoal with astonishing precision. Chemical analysis identifies pigments invisible to the naked eye. DNA extracted from ancient soil can even reveal animals and plants that left no visible remains behind. Yet despite these technological breakthroughs, some of the most important questions remain unanswered. Who were the people who walked these passages? What language did they speak? What stories did they tell around their fires? What fears haunted them during long winter nights? What hopes did they carry as glaciers slowly disappeared from the landscape? Science can estimate dates. It can identify tools. It can reconstruct climates. But it cannot fully recover human thoughts. That silence is perhaps the greatest mystery preserved inside the cave. Every discovery reminds us that history is not simply a sequence of kings, battles, and monuments. For thousands of years, ordinary people lived remarkable lives that left almost no written record behind. Their laughter disappeared into darkness. Their voices faded long ago. Yet their footprints, fires, and carefully crafted tools survived. Hidden beneath layers of stone, they waited patiently for thousands of years. And as archaeologists prepared to explore even deeper chambers beyond the known passages, they had no idea that the greatest mystery of the cave was still waiting ahead. The deeper archaeologists explored, the stranger the cave became. At first, everything seemed consistent with what researchers expected from an Ice Age shelter. Stone tools, animal bones, fireplaces, and footprints all pointed toward temporary human occupation. But then the cave took an unexpected turn. One narrow passage, barely wide enough for a person to squeeze through, led into complete darkness. Beyond it lay a network of tunnels unlike anything the team had anticipated. Some stretched hundreds of feet beneath the surface. Others split into multiple directions, disappearing into chambers that had remained hidden since long before recorded history. The question was immediate and unsettling. Were these tunnels created entirely by nature? Or had ancient people deliberately expanded them? The deeper scientists ventured, the more difficult that question became to answer. Underground tunnel systems have fascinated explorers for centuries. Across the world, enormous networks exist beneath mountains, deserts, and even modern cities. Some are clearly natural, carved over millions of years as underground rivers slowly dissolved limestone into twisting caves. Others show unmistakable signs of human engineering, complete with carved walls, ventilation shafts, staircases, and storage rooms. The newly discovered passages seem to contain elements of both. Certain sections displayed the rounded curves typical of natural caves. Water had clearly shaped these tunnels long before humans ever entered them. Yet in other areas, the walls appeared unusually smooth. Sharp corners interrupted otherwise natural formations. Narrow corridors connected chambers in ways that seemed surprisingly deliberate. Researchers refused to jump to conclusions. Nature is capable of producing astonishing geological formations that often resemble artificial structures. Throughout history, many supposed man-made discoveries have later been explained by perfectly natural processes. Because of this, archaeologists approached every section with extreme caution. Still, several features continued to puzzle the team. One chamber contained a series of shallow grooves carved into the rock floor. They were too straight to ignore. Each groove ran almost parallel with the next, maintaining remarkably even spacing across several feet. No one knew their purpose. Perhaps they resulted from repeated human movement over thousands of years. Perhaps heavy objects had been dragged across the floor. Or perhaps they were simply the product of geological cracking that happened to resemble tool marks. Without stronger evidence, every possibility remained open. As mapping continued, laser scanners revealed something even more remarkable. The tunnel system extended far beyond the accessible chambers. Behind apparently solid rock lay additional voids that no one had entered since the cave had been sealed. Ground-penetrating radar suggested entire rooms still hidden beneath collapsed passages. Some chambers appeared enormous, almost cathedral-like in size. Excitement quickly spread through the archaeological community. Every unexplored chamber represented another untouched archive from the distant past. But reaching them would not be easy. Collapsed ceilings, unstable rock, and limited oxygen created constant dangers. Engineers worked alongside archaeologists, reinforcing fragile sections before anyone could safely continue deeper underground. Unlike adventure films, archaeological exploration moves painfully slowly. Weeks of preparation often lead to only a few hours of excavation. Every stone removed must be documented. Every layer recorded. Every discovery preserved. The goal is not simply to reach the end of the tunnel. It is to understand the story hidden within it. As researchers gradually advanced, they began noticing subtle signs that ancient visitors may have deliberately navigated these passages. Soot stains darkened portions of several ceilings. The black residue suggested repeated use of fire. Torchlight would have been essential inside absolute darkness, where even a few steps away from the entrance, sunlight disappears completely. Microscopic analysis later confirmed that some of this soot likely originated from prehistoric fires rather than modern equipment. That raised another fascinating question. Why would people venture so deeply underground? The deepest chambers offered no obvious advantages. There was no fresh water, no natural light, little room for long-term shelter. Simply reaching these areas required navigating tight passages that would have been dangerous even with modern flashlights. Yet ancient people came anyway. Perhaps they searched for valuable minerals. Perhaps they sought protection during extreme weather. Or perhaps these dark chambers held spiritual significance that has vanished from human memory. Similar mysteries appear throughout the world. In present-day Turkey, thousands of people once lived inside vast underground cities carved into volcanic rock. Multi-level settlements such as Derinkuyu contained homes, storage rooms, wells, kitchens, schools, and ventilation systems descending deep beneath the surface. Entire communities could survive underground for extended periods. No one knows exactly how long these remarkable cities remained occupied, but they demonstrate that ancient societies sometimes viewed the underground world as more than a temporary refuge. Elsewhere in Europe, prehistoric mines reveal astonishing engineering. Thousands of years before the invention of steel machinery, miners extracted valuable flint using antler picks, stone hammers, and remarkable determination. They dug shafts reaching surprising depths, supported only by simple technology and experience passed between generations. These discoveries remind us that ancient people were often far more capable than modern stereotypes suggest. They carefully observed nature. They solved complex engineering problems. They adapted to environments that many people today would struggle to survive. Back inside the newly discovered cave, another unusual feature emerged. Several chambers possessed extraordinary acoustics. Even a quiet whisper echoed across the walls. A single clap of the hands produced multiple reflections that seemed to travel through adjoining tunnels. Some archaeologists have proposed that such spaces may have held ceremonial importance. Sound behaves differently underground. Voices become distorted. Echoes appear to originate from invisible locations. To people without scientific explanations, these natural effects may have seemed mysterious, perhaps even supernatural. Although no direct evidence confirms ritual activity inside this particular cave, researchers continue studying how ancient humans interacted with these unusual acoustic environments. One especially narrow corridor ended abruptly at what appeared to be a collapsed wall. Initially, the blockage seemed natural, but closer inspection revealed something unexpected. Several large stones rested against one another in an arrangement unlike the surrounding rockfall. Were they intentionally placed? Or had gravity simply stacked them in an unlikely pattern? The distinction is critical. If ancient people deliberately sealed portions of the cave, it would suggest they wished to protect, hide, or isolate something beyond. For now, however, the evidence remains inconclusive. Excavating such a collapse could take years, and doing so carelessly risks destroying priceless archaeological information forever. Patience remains the archaeologist's greatest tool. As weeks turned into months, the cave continued offering small clues rather than dramatic answers. Tiny fragments of charcoal, broken stone flakes left behind during tool-making, animal tracks crossing abandoned passages. Each discovery added another sentence to a story written over 11,000 years ago. Yet the greatest lesson emerging from the tunnels was not about mystery alone. It was about perspective. Modern civilization often views itself as the peak of human achievement, but underground passages like these remind us that our ancestors possessed remarkable intelligence, resilience, and curiosity. They explored dangerous environments without electric lights, maps, or modern equipment. They learned to navigate darkness using memory, observation, and experience alone. Some entered these caves for survival. Others may have entered seeking meaning. Whatever drew them beneath the earth, their journey did not end when they left. Thousands of years later, archaeologists now follow the very same paths, asking many of the same questions. What lies farther ahead? What remains hidden beyond the next chamber? And how many more forgotten worlds still wait beneath the surface, untouched by human eyes since the dawn of civilization? The deeper researchers investigated ancient underground mysteries, the more often they encountered evidence that seemed impossible to explain. Massive tunnels carved through solid rock appeared in places where no known civilization had possessed the technology to create them. At first, many archaeologists believed these enormous passageways had been built by ancient humans. The walls were smooth in places, the ceilings surprisingly stable, and some tunnels stretched for hundreds of feet beneath the earth. But then came a discovery that completely changed the story. The strange claw marks covering the walls revealed that these incredible structures might not have been built by humans at all. Instead, they may have been the work of giant prehistoric animals that vanished thousands of years ago. If true, these creatures were capable of transforming entire landscapes beneath the Earth's surface, leaving behind one of the greatest geological mysteries ever discovered. The first of these unusual tunnels came to scientific attention in South America during the 20th century. Local residents had known about some of them for generations, often assuming they were abandoned mines or ancient human constructions. After all, the openings were enormous. Some measured over 6 feet high and several feet wide, large enough for a modern person to walk through comfortably. Others continued for hundreds of feet before disappearing into darkness. At first glance, the idea that humans had excavated them seemed reasonable. Ancient civilizations throughout the Americas had demonstrated remarkable engineering abilities. They built pyramids, carved cities into mountainsides, and transported stones weighing dozens of tons across vast distances. Why couldn't they also have constructed underground passageways? But the more closely scientists examined the tunnels, the more problems appeared. Unlike human-made mines, these passages lacked evidence of organized excavation. There were no piles of discarded rock, no stone tools abandoned by workers, no signs of fire used to crack solid stone. The tunnels also wandered unpredictably through the earth, twisting around obstacles instead of following the most efficient routes. Then researchers noticed something extraordinary. The tunnel walls were covered with long parallel scratches, thousands of them. Some extended several feet across the rock surface. Others overlapped, forming dense patterns that covered entire sections of the ceiling and walls. These weren't random cracks created by geological forces. Under careful examination, they displayed a consistency that strongly suggested repeated contact by enormous claws. Geologists immediately ruled out natural erosion. Water doesn't produce evenly spaced claw-like grooves. Neither do earthquakes. The marks had clearly been made by living creatures. But what kind of animal could possibly dig tunnels this large? The answer seemed almost unbelievable. Scientists began comparing the scratches with fossil remains from extinct mammals that once roamed South America during the Ice Age. One candidate matched remarkably well: the giant ground sloth. Modern sloths are gentle tree-dwelling animals no larger than a medium-sized dog. They move slowly through tropical forests, feeding almost entirely on leaves. Looking at one today, it's difficult to imagine any connection to gigantic underground tunnels. Their prehistoric relatives, however, were an entirely different story. Some species stood over 12 feet tall when they rose onto their hind legs. They weighed several tons and possessed incredibly powerful forelimbs ending in enormous curved claws. These claws weren't designed for hunting. Instead, they served as highly effective digging tools capable of tearing through compact soil and softer rock. Computer simulations showed that the spacing between fossil sloth claws closely matched many of the mysterious grooves preserved inside the tunnels. The evidence became increasingly convincing. Yet another mystery remained. Why would giant ground sloths dig such enormous burrows in the first place? Creating tunnels hundreds of feet long would have required astonishing amounts of energy. Even today, large mammals rarely excavate structures on such a scale. Several explanations have been proposed. Perhaps the burrows offered protection from predators such as saber-toothed cats or giant short-faced bears. They may have provided stable temperatures during periods of extreme heat or cold. Some researchers even suggest that generations of sloths repeatedly expanded existing burrows, slowly creating the enormous tunnel systems discovered today. No single explanation satisfies every observation. And that's exactly what makes these discoveries so fascinating. The deeper scientists explored, the larger the underground networks became. In southern Brazil alone, researchers have documented well over 1,000 giant paleo-burrows. Some contain multiple entrances connected by branching corridors. Others terminate in large chambers that resemble underground rooms. Certain tunnel systems extend for hundreds of feet beneath hillsides before ending abruptly in collapsed sections that remain inaccessible. Every new discovery adds another piece to a puzzle that is still far from complete. Not every scientist immediately accepted the giant sloth hypothesis. Healthy scientific debate is essential whenever extraordinary claims are made. Some researchers questioned whether other extinct animals, including giant armadillos known as glyptodonts, may also have contributed to the construction of certain tunnels. Others suggested that different species may have modified the same burrows over thousands of years. Evidence continues to accumulate. Modern three-dimensional scanning allows researchers to examine claw marks in extraordinary detail without damaging the fragile surfaces. Digital models reveal subtle differences in scratch patterns, helping scientists estimate the size and movement of the animals that created them. Even with this advanced technology, many questions remain unanswered. Some tunnels appear too large even for the biggest known sloths. Others contain sections with unusually smooth ceilings that seem difficult to explain through digging alone. Nature rarely provides simple answers. Sometimes several different processes combine to produce features that initially appear impossible. Perhaps ancient geological cavities already existed, and giant mammals merely expanded them. Perhaps multiple generations of animals occupied and enlarged the same burrows over thousands of years. Or perhaps there are chapters of prehistoric life that scientists have not yet uncovered. One remarkable aspect of these tunnels is their age. Many date back tens of thousands of years, long before the first large civilizations appeared anywhere on Earth. During that distant era, South America looked dramatically different. Vast grasslands stretched across regions now covered by forests. Giant mammals wandered landscapes shared with early human hunters who had only recently arrived on the continent. Imagine encountering one of these enormous creatures. Standing face to face with an animal larger than an elephant, equipped with claws nearly a foot long, would have been an unforgettable experience. Yet despite their intimidating appearance, evidence suggests giant ground sloths were primarily herbivores. They spent much of their lives feeding on vegetation rather than hunting other animals. Eventually, however, they disappeared. Like mammoths, saber-toothed cats, and many other Ice Age giants, they became extinct near the end of the last glacial period. Scientists continue debating exactly why. Climate change likely played an important role. Rapid warming transformed habitats that had supported these massive animals for thousands of years. At the same time, expanding human populations introduced new pressures through hunting and competition. Perhaps no single cause explains their disappearance. Perhaps several factors combined to eliminate some of Earth's most extraordinary mammals. Today, the tunnels remain as silent reminders of that vanished world. Visitors walking through them often assume they are entering abandoned human constructions. Few realize they may actually be following pathways carved by creatures that vanished before recorded history even began. And in a way, these enormous burrows connect perfectly with the untouched cave that began our journey. Both preserve forgotten worlds beneath our feet. Both challenge assumptions about the ancient past. And both remind us that history is far stranger than we often imagine. Because sometimes the greatest architects of the underground were not humans at all, but giants whose existence survives only in fossils, mysterious tunnels, and the unanswered questions they left behind. The cave did not end the story. It opened the door to another mystery. As researchers compared underground discoveries from different parts of the world, they noticed something impossible to ignore. Across continents separated by thousands of miles, ancient civilizations had carved enormous tunnels through solid rock. Some stretched for miles beneath forests and mountains. Others appeared beneath forgotten temples or hidden landscapes. None of them fit comfortably into the history books. For decades, Archaeologists assumed these passages served practical purposes. Some were believed to be storage chambers. Others were labeled defensive escape routes or primitive mines. But the deeper researchers explored, the more these explanations began to fall apart. Many tunnels were far too carefully engineered for temporary shelters. They featured smooth walls, consistent dimensions, carefully planned ventilation, and junctions that seemed to follow deliberate geometric patterns. Even more puzzling, many showed almost no evidence of long-term human occupation. There were very few cooking areas, almost no household artifacts, and little indication that people had actually lived inside them. Instead, these places seemed designed for movement. In Europe alone, thousands of mysterious underground passages have been documented. Germany, Austria, France, Scotland, Ireland, and the Czech Republic all contain extensive tunnel systems hidden beneath medieval villages, forests, and farmland. Many are so narrow that a modern adult must crawl through them. Others suddenly expand into perfectly carved chambers before narrowing again into darkness. Some researchers estimate that these tunnels may once have formed an interconnected underground network stretching across much of Europe. That possibility sounds almost unbelievable. How could societies separated by vast distances create structures sharing nearly identical architectural features without modern communication? Even stranger, many of these tunnels appear far older than the castles, churches, and towns built directly above them. The surface changed. The tunnels remained. One of the strongest supporters of this mystery is German archaeologist Heinrich Kusch, who spent years documenting thousands of these underground passages. According to his research, many could date back more than 10,000 years, reaching into a period immediately after the last ice age. If true, that would completely transform our understanding of prehistoric engineering. Most historians describe people of that era as small groups of hunter-gatherers gradually adapting to changing climates. Yet someone was carving stable passageways through solid rock, without steel tools, without modern drilling equipment, without explosives. The engineering alone raises difficult questions. Many tunnels maintain remarkably consistent dimensions over hundreds of feet. The ceilings rarely collapse despite thousands of years underground. In some locations, builders even incorporated drainage systems to prevent flooding. Every decision suggests planning, not improvisation. The mystery grows deeper when similar underground structures appear outside Europe. In Turkey, the ancient underground city of Derinkuyu descends more than 280 feet below the surface. It contains dozens of levels connected by tunnels, complete with wells, ventilation shafts, storage rooms, churches, schools, and living quarters. Modern estimates suggest that nearly 20,000 people could have sheltered inside simultaneously. The builders even designed enormous circular stone doors that could be rolled into place from the inside, sealing entire sections of the city during invasion. What is astonishing is not only its size, it is its sophistication. Fresh air reaches the deepest levels through carefully positioned ventilation shafts. Water remains accessible without exposing inhabitants to the surface. Livestock could be kept underground. Entire communities functioned in complete darkness for extended periods. Although much of Derinkuyu was expanded during later civilizations, many experts believe the earliest sections are significantly older than previously assumed. Who first began digging? No one knows. Then there are the mysterious Erdstalls scattered across Central Europe. These tiny tunnels often end abruptly in sealed chambers with no obvious purpose. Some contain crawl spaces barely wider than a human body. Why would ancient builders create passages so uncomfortable to navigate? Some historians propose they served as hiding places during times of war. Others believe they were religious sites connected to forgotten rituals. Still others suggest they may have represented symbolic journeys linked to death and rebirth. None of these explanations fully account for the remarkable consistency found across hundreds of separate locations. every answer creates new questions. Technology has recently added another layer to the mystery. Ground-penetrating radar and LiDAR scanning now allow archaeologists to detect hidden voids beneath forests and fields without excavation. What they are finding is astonishing. Entire networks remain buried. Some passages connect ancient settlements once believed completely isolated. Others extend toward monuments whose relationships were previously unknown. Every new scan reveals more underground architecture than anyone expected. Sometimes excavation confirms the radar images. Other times, researchers discover passages leading into chambers completely untouched since antiquity. Inside, artifacts remain exactly where ancient hands left them thousands of years ago. It feels less like archaeology, and more like opening sealed time capsules. Yet one question refuses to disappear. Why build underground at all? Protection from enemies? Climate change? Religious ceremonies? Astronomical observations? Storage? Or something we have not yet imagined? Some researchers point to the dramatic environmental instability following the end of the last ice age. Rising sea levels, shifting climates, floods, earthquakes, and unpredictable weather could have encouraged populations to seek safer environments below ground. Others argue that many tunnels seem too elaborate for simple survival. Their careful geometry hints at something more meaningful. Perhaps underground represented a sacred space, a symbolic connection between life, death, and the earth itself. Ancient myths across dozens of cultures speak of hidden worlds beneath the surface. Greek legends describe entrances to the underworld. Celtic traditions tell of underground kingdoms. Mesopotamian stories mention mysterious realms below the earth. Even indigenous traditions across multiple continents describe ancestors emerging from caves. Could these myths preserve distant memories of civilizations that once depended on underground spaces? Or are they simply stories inspired by nature? No one can say with certainty. What we do know is this: the earth beneath our feet is far less empty than it appears. Every year, new tunnels are discovered. Every year, old assumptions collapse. Every excavation reminds us that ancient people possessed skills we still struggle to explain. And perhaps the greatest mystery is not why they built underground. Perhaps it is why so much of their story disappeared. Because as incredible as these tunnels seem, another discovery would soon force archaeologists to confront something even harder to explain. Not carved stone, not hidden chambers, but enormous claw marks left behind by creatures so massive that, at first glance, they appeared impossible. The discovery did not begin with bones. It began with scratches. At first, they looked like random grooves carved into solid rock. Weathered lines stretching across the walls and ceilings of enormous underground chambers deep within South America. Geologists assumed they were natural fractures. Others suggested ancient tools. But the closer scientists looked, the stranger the markings became. Each groove followed the same curved pattern. Each mark appeared in groups, and each one was far too large to have been made by any known human tool. Then came the realization that changed everything. These were claw marks. Not from bears. Not from big cats. Not from any animal alive today. Something enormous had once scraped these walls with incredible force. The deeper researchers explored, the more unbelievable the evidence became. Across Brazil and parts of Argentina, archaeologists have identified thousands of gigantic underground tunnels unlike anything previously documented. Some stretch for hundreds of feet beneath hillsides. Others branch into massive chambers large enough to fit modern trucks. Their ceilings are smooth, their walls carefully rounded, and throughout many of them are the same unmistakable scratches. Gigantic claw marks. Scientists eventually gave these mysterious structures a name: paleoburrows. Unlike ordinary caves formed by flowing water or volcanic activity, paleoburrows appear to have been excavated by living creatures. That alone sounds extraordinary, but the scale makes it almost impossible to comprehend. Some tunnels reach nearly 7 feet high and 6 feet wide, dimensions far beyond anything created by modern burrowing animals. One famous paleo burrow discovered in southern Brazil stretches for more than 2,000 feet. Imagine digging a tunnel longer than 6 football fields, without machinery, using nothing but claws. For decades, geologists struggled to explain these structures. There were no known geological processes capable of producing tunnels with such regular shapes. Water erosion leaves characteristic patterns. Volcanic tubes possess distinctive textures. Neither matched what scientists observed. The walls displayed deliberate excavation marks. Layer after layer, stroke after stroke, as though some unimaginably powerful animal had carved directly into the earth. The breakthrough came when paleontologists compared the claw marks with fossil remains from South America's Ice Age. One creature stood out immediately: the giant ground sloth. Modern sloths spend most of their lives hanging quietly from trees. Their movements are slow, their bodies relatively small, their claws designed for climbing. But their ancient relatives were something entirely different. Some species stood over 20 feet tall when reaching upward. Others weighed nearly 4 tons. Their massive forelimbs ended in claws exceeding a foot in length. Powerful enough to tear apart trees. Powerful enough, perhaps, to dig. Among these prehistoric giants, one species captured particular attention: Megatherium. Its skeleton resembles something between a bear, an elephant, and an enormous sloth. Its hind legs supported tremendous weight, while muscular forearms carried claws capable of immense force. Could such an animal really have excavated tunnels hundreds of feet long? Researchers began running biomechanical models. The results surprised everyone. The sloths possessed exactly the type of limb strength needed for sustained digging. The spacing between fossil claws even matched many of the mysterious scratch patterns preserved inside the tunnels. For the first time, the impossible began to seem possible. Yet new questions immediately appeared. Why would giant sloths dig at all? Modern sloths avoid the ground whenever possible. They certainly do not construct underground labyrinths. Some scientists suggest these ancient species sought protection from predators. During the Ice Age, South America was home to terrifying hunters: saber-toothed cats, giant short-faced bears, massive predatory birds. A secure underground shelter may have offered valuable protection. Others argue that the tunnels helped regulate temperature. Ice Age climates fluctuated dramatically. Underground chambers remain remarkably stable year-round, protecting inhabitants from extreme heat and cold. There is another possibility. Perhaps the tunnels served multiple generations. Some paleoburrows appear to have been expanded repeatedly over centuries. Different claw marks overlap one another. Walls display signs of continual excavation. Instead of temporary shelters, they may have become permanent homes passed down through countless generations. Then researchers discovered something even stranger. Not every tunnel fits the giant sloth theory. Some contain scratch marks that differ significantly in size and shape. These appear broader, deeper, more widely spaced. Another prehistoric animal enters the story: glyptodonts. Imagine an armadillo the size of a small automobile. Protected by enormous armored shells weighing hundreds of pounds, these incredible mammals roamed South America alongside giant sloths. Their powerful claws could also dig effectively. Perhaps several extinct species contributed to the vast underground systems. Perhaps entire ecosystems existed beneath the surface. That possibility transforms how we imagine prehistoric life. Instead of isolated animals wandering ancient landscapes, we may be looking at a hidden underground world. Entire networks of shelters, generations living below the surface, predators hunting above, survival unfolding beneath our feet. Technology continues revealing just how widespread these structures truly are. LiDAR surveys and satellite imaging now detect subtle depressions, indicating collapsed tunnel roofs. Every year, new paleoburrows are discovered. Some remain almost perfectly preserved. Others disappear into unexplored darkness beyond the reach of current excavations. Many have never been fully mapped. What lies at their farthest ends remains unknown. Some researchers have crawled through miles of these ancient passages. The experience is unforgettable. The air becomes cooler. Silence grows overwhelming. Flashlights reveal claw marks covering every surface. There are moments when it feels less like entering a geological formation, and more like walking into the abandoned home of a creature that simply stepped outside. Thousands of years ago. The mystery also reminds us how incomplete the fossil record truly is. We often imagine prehistoric life through isolated skeletons displayed inside museums. But behavior rarely fossilizes. Burrows do. Tracks do. Scratch marks do. These tunnels preserve actions instead of bones. They record movement, effort, decisions, moments repeated over centuries. In a way, they allow us to witness extinct animals at work, not frozen in death, but alive. Still, one unsettling question refuses to disappear. If creatures capable of excavating tunnels this enormous once existed, how many other traces of vanished worlds remain hidden beneath forests, deserts, and mountains, waiting for someone to notice them? Because the next mystery is not about animals. It is about beings who may never have existed at all. Legends describe them as towering builders, keepers of impossible knowledge, and the true architects behind some of humanity's oldest mysteries. Were they only myths? Or did ancient civilizations remember something history has long forgotten? History has always blurred the line between fact and legend. Some stories begin as myths, only to reveal fragments of forgotten truth centuries later. Others remain suspended in uncertainty, impossible to prove, and equally impossible to dismiss. Few legends capture that uneasy balance better than the tale of giants. Every civilization seems to remember them. Ancient Greece spoke of the Titans, colossal beings who ruled before the Olympian gods. Norse mythology described the Jotnar, giants older than humanity itself. Native American traditions tell of enormous beings who walked the earth before modern people arrived. In the Hebrew Bible, mysterious figures known as the Nephilim appear briefly, described as mighty men of old. Similar stories emerge across South America, Asia, Africa, and the Pacific Islands. How could civilizations separated by oceans create such remarkably similar legends? Coincidence? Shared imagination? Or memories distorted by thousands of years of storytelling? For archaeologists, legends alone prove nothing. Evidence does. And occasionally discoveries appear that seem almost designed to fuel these ancient myths. One of the most mysterious locations connected to giant legends lies on the Mediterranean island of Sardinia. The island is famous for thousands of mysterious stone towers called nuraghe, massive defensive structures built more than 3,000 years ago by a civilization that still puzzles historians today. But hidden among these ancient ruins lies another mystery: the so-called tombs of the giants. Despite their dramatic name, no gigantic skeletons have ever been found inside them. Instead, these enormous burial monuments earned their name because of their astonishing scale. Some stretch nearly 100 feet in length. Huge upright stones frame wide ceremonial entrances. Massive curved facades dominate the surrounding landscape. When 19th century travelers first encountered these structures, many believed only giants could have built monuments of such size. Modern archaeology tells a different story. The tombs were almost certainly communal burial sites constructed by skilled Bronze Age engineers. Yet one question remains. Why build graves on such an enormous scale? The answer remains uncertain. Perhaps the architecture carried symbolic meaning. Perhaps the builders wished to honor powerful ancestors. Or perhaps later generations simply invented giant legends to explain monuments whose original purpose had already been forgotten. Sardinia contains another mystery. Scattered across the island are thousands of mysterious stone statues, bronze figurines, and carved faces depicting unusually tall warriors with exaggerated proportions. Some wear enormous helmets. Others possess oversized eyes unlike any realistic human figure. While most archaeologists interpret these as symbolic artistic choices, alternative theories continue to attract public imagination. Were they portraying real individuals or mythological protectors? Again, certainty remains out of reach. Legends become even stranger when we cross the Atlantic. In North America during the 19th century, newspapers frequently reported discoveries of unusually large skeletons uncovered during construction projects and archaeological excavations. Many claimed heights exceeding 8 or even 10 feet. Some articles described double rows of teeth. Others mentioned oversized weapons buried alongside the remains. These sensational reports spread rapidly. Today, however, historians approach them with considerable skepticism. Many lacked proper scientific documentation. Some likely exaggerated measurements. Others appear to have been outright hoaxes published during an era when sensational journalism sold newspapers. Despite countless stories, no verified human skeleton of such extraordinary size has ever been confirmed by modern science. Still, the reports refuse to disappear. Every few years, photographs claiming to show giant skeletons circulate across social media. Most turn out to be digitally manipulated images or misunderstood archaeological discoveries taken completely out of context. Yet people continue believing. Perhaps because giant stories satisfy something deep within human imagination. They make the past feel larger, more mysterious, more dramatic. Interestingly, real science offers something almost as fascinating. Gigantism does exist. Certain medical conditions affecting growth hormones can produce exceptionally tall individuals. History records several people exceeding 8 feet in height. The tallest medically documented human was Robert Wadlow, who reached 8 feet 11 inches before his death in 1940. His condition demonstrates that extraordinary human height is biologically possible, just not on the mythical scale described in ancient legends. Meanwhile, archaeology has uncovered genuine evidence of enormous prehistoric animals that early humans almost certainly encountered. Giant ground sloths, mammoths, 12-foot-tall short-faced bears, massive aurochs, towering flightless birds. Imagine witnessing these creatures without scientific understanding. Their fossilized bones alone would seem almost impossible to explain. Ancient people occasionally discovered such fossils themselves. Without knowledge of extinct species, they interpreted gigantic bones through the only framework available. Giants, heroes, monsters, gods. Some historians believe this process may explain how many giant legends first emerged. Large fossil bones became evidence supporting already existing myths. Over generations, stories grew larger than life. Yet certain archaeological discoveries continue encouraging speculation. Take the enormous stone blocks at Baalbek in modern-day Lebanon. Some weigh more than 800 tons. Nearby lies the famous Stone of the Pregnant Woman, an unfinished monolith weighing over 1,000 tons. Even larger stones have since been uncovered in the same quarry. Modern cranes struggle with loads approaching these weights. Ancient engineers somehow quarried, transported, and positioned similarly massive blocks thousands of years ago. Did giants build them? There is no evidence supporting that idea. Instead, Researchers believe remarkable human ingenuity, labor organization, and engineering techniques accomplished what appears impossible today. The truth may be even more impressive than mythology. Ordinary people achieving extraordinary things. Nevertheless, legends continue. Perhaps because every unanswered question invites imagination. History is filled with monuments whose construction remains only partially understood. When explanations feel incomplete, myths naturally grow around them. And sometimes, those myths survive longer than facts. One curious detail appears across many cultures. Giants are rarely portrayed simply as larger humans. They often possess advanced knowledge. They teach architecture, astronomy, metalworking, navigation, agriculture. In many traditions, giants become keepers of forgotten wisdom rather than mere monsters. Why? Perhaps ancient storytellers used giant figures as symbols representing vanished civilizations whose accomplishments seemed impossible to later generations. Or perhaps these legends preserve distorted memories of real societies whose achievements faded into mystery. No one truly knows. But history has demonstrated one important lesson again and again. Today's myths occasionally become tomorrow's discoveries. Ancient Troy was once dismissed as pure legend until archaeologists uncovered its ruins. The city of Heracleion disappeared beneath the Mediterranean for over 1,000 years before divers rediscovered it. Even Göbekli Tepe challenged assumptions about the origins of civilization. Every generation believes history is mostly complete. Every generation is eventually proven wrong. And the next mystery reminds us that some forgotten knowledge may not lie beneath stone at all, but beneath water. Hidden below the calm surface of an ancient volcanic lake, archaeologists would uncover clues pointing toward a civilization whose secrets had remained submerged for thousands of years. For thousands of years, lakes have been seen as symbols of peace. Their calm surfaces reflect mountains, forests, and open skies. Standing on the shore, it is easy to believe nothing unusual has ever happened there. But beneath certain lakes, history has been quietly hiding its greatest secrets. Entire forests sleep below the water. Ancient villages remain frozen in time. Roads disappear into darkness. And sometimes, archaeologists discover evidence that completely changes what we thought we knew about the people who lived thousands of years ago. One such mystery begins at the bottom of a volcanic lake. Imagine lowering a robotic camera into dark, cold water hundreds of feet deep. At first, the screen shows nothing but drifting sediment and scattered rocks. Then, slowly, strange shapes emerge from the darkness. Perfectly cut wooden beams, stone foundations, human-made objects resting exactly where they were abandoned thousands of years ago. This is not fiction. Across Europe and other parts of the world, underwater archaeology has uncovered settlements preserved so well that they provide an extraordinary window into prehistoric life. Among the most fascinating discoveries are the ancient lake villages built during the Stone and Bronze Ages. More than 5,000 years ago, communities constructed homes on wooden platforms supported by thousands of timber posts driven deep into shallow lake beds. Entire villages stood above the water, connected by narrow walkways and surrounded by natural defenses. At first glance, building above water seems unnecessarily difficult. Why not settle on dry land? Researchers believe there were several reasons. Living above lakes offered protection from wild animals and hostile neighbors. Water also provided fish, transportation, and easier access to fresh drinking supplies. Seasonal flooding that threatened ordinary settlements became far less dangerous for homes elevated above the surface. These communities flourished for centuries. Then, for reasons that often remain unclear, many were abandoned. Over time, changing water levels submerged them completely. Instead of destroying the villages, the lakes preserved them. Without oxygen, Wood decays remarkably slowly. Objects that would normally disappear within decades remained almost untouched for thousands of years. Modern divers have recovered wooden bowls, woven baskets, farming tools, clothing fragments, fishing nets, and even pieces of bread. Every object feels astonishingly familiar. These were not mysterious people from another world. They laughed, cooked meals, raised children, fixed broken tools, argued with neighbors, planned for tomorrow, and then they vanished. One of the richest collections of these settlements lies around the Alps, where more than 1,000 prehistoric lake sites have been identified across Switzerland, Germany, Austria, France, Italy, and Slovenia. Many are now recognized as some of Europe's most important archaeological treasures. Every excavation reveals another chapter of everyday human history that would otherwise have disappeared forever. Yet volcanic lakes present mysteries of their own. Take Italy's Lake Bolsena. Formed inside the crater of an extinct volcano, it appears peaceful today. But beneath its waters lie traces of ancient civilizations stretching back thousands of years. Divers have discovered submerged roads, ancient harbors, and ritual objects whose original purposes remain uncertain. Changing water levels slowly swallowed these structures over centuries. The lake became a silent guardian of forgotten history. Even more mysterious is Lake Ohrid, shared by North Macedonia and Albania. Often called Europe's oldest lake, it formed millions of years ago. Its remarkable age allowed unique ecosystems to evolve, but it also attracted human settlement since prehistoric times. Recent underwater excavations revealed an ancient stilt village protected by thousands of sharpened wooden stakes driven into the lake bed. Researchers estimate that the settlement may be over 8,000 years old. That would make it one of Europe's earliest lakeside communities. What surprised archaeologists most was not simply its age. It was the extraordinary level of planning. The defensive barrier surrounding the settlement required enormous labor. Thousands of carefully positioned wooden posts created a protective ring around the village. Who were these people expecting to defend themselves against? Wild animals? Hostile tribes? Or dangers we no longer understand? Far away, another crater lake tells an equally remarkable story. In central Oregon lies Crater Lake, famous for its astonishing blue water. To visitors, it appears untouched. Yet indigenous oral traditions preserved by the Klamath people describe a violent volcanic eruption that formed the lake thousands of years ago. For generations, these stories passed from elders to children. Many early scientists dismissed them as symbolic myths. Then, geological research confirmed that a massive volcanic collapse had indeed created the lake approximately 7,700 years ago. The oral tradition had preserved an authentic memory of a catastrophic geological event across nearly 8 millennia. It serves as a powerful reminder. Not every ancient story is merely a legend. Some preserve real history with astonishing accuracy. Underwater archaeology has also revealed another fascinating truth. People have always adapted. When coastlines changed, they moved. When lakes expanded, they rebuilt. When volcanoes erupted, they survived. Ancient humans were far more resilient than we often imagine. Technology is now allowing researchers to explore submerged landscapes with unprecedented precision. Side-scan sonar maps entire lake beds. LiDAR reveals hidden shorelines buried beneath vegetation. Autonomous underwater vehicles glide silently through darkness, capturing detailed three-dimensional images impossible only a few decades ago. Each survey reveals new structures: ancient docks, stone walls, wooden bridges, lost settlements, entire chapters of history emerging from beneath still water. Yet one haunting question remains. How many more civilizations now rest beneath lakes, rivers, and oceans, completely unknown because we simply have not looked deeply enough? Sea levels have risen more than 400 feet since the last ice age. Vast coastal plains where prehistoric humans once lived now lie beneath the sea. Those landscapes may contain countless archaeological sites hidden forever beneath layers of sediment. Every underwater discovery reminds us that history is far larger than the dry land we explore. They may lie beneath silent water. And as remarkable as these submerged settlements are, the next discovery takes us even farther back into humanity's forgotten ingenuity. Because long before written history recorded great naval empires, our ancestors were already crossing dangerous seas in vessels whose sophistication continues to astonish archaeologists today. For centuries, historians believed that ancient people feared the open sea. The oceans were simply too dangerous. Without engines, compasses, or modern navigation, crossing vast stretches of water seemed almost impossible. According to the traditional view, early civilizations stayed close to rivers and coastlines, rarely venturing beyond the horizon. Then archaeology began pulling impossible objects from the bottom of the sea. Every new discovery forced scientists to ask the same unsettling question. What if our ancestors were far better sailors than we ever imagined? One of the greatest mysteries begins not with a shipwreck, but with a journey. Imagine standing on an isolated island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Thousands of miles separate you from the nearest continent. There are no visible landmarks, no mountain ranges, no cities, nothing but endless blue water stretching in every direction. Now imagine reaching this island, not with steel ships or GPS, but with a wooden canoe. That is exactly what ancient Polynesians accomplished. Long before Europeans entered the Pacific, these extraordinary navigators explored 1/3 of the Earth's surface using nothing more than handcrafted vessels, the stars above them, the waves beneath them, and generations of knowledge passed entirely through memory. Modern researchers still struggle to understand how such precise navigation was possible. Polynesian sailors memorized the positions of hundreds of stars. They studied ocean swells that changed direction after reflecting off distant islands hidden far beyond the horizon. They recognized subtle differences in cloud formations, bird migration routes, floating vegetation, and even the color of seawater. To outsiders, the ocean appeared empty. To experienced navigators, it was filled with invisible roads. Their achievements remained underestimated until modern expeditions recreated these ancient voyages. Using traditional double-hulled canoes without modern instruments, sailors successfully crossed thousands of miles exactly as their ancestors had done centuries earlier. The impossible suddenly became reality. But Polynesia is only part of the story. Far older mysteries lie buried beneath European waters. Off the coast of England, archaeologists uncovered an astonishing Bronze Age boat near Dover. The vessel is more than 3,500 years old. Unlike simple dugout canoes carved from single tree trunks, this boat was constructed from multiple oak planks, carefully stitched together using wooden joints and plant fibers. Its builders possessed remarkable engineering skills. Every plank fit with astonishing precision. The design distributed weight efficiently while maintaining flexibility against powerful ocean waves. Researchers were amazed. This was not primitive experimentation. It was advanced naval architecture. Whoever built it understood the sea remarkably well. Even more astonishing discoveries emerged from the Mediterranean. Near the coast of Turkey, divers located one of history's oldest known shipwrecks. The Uluburun ship sank over 3,300 years ago while carrying an extraordinary cargo. Inside were copper ingots, tin, ivory, glass beads, ebony wood, precious jewelry, spices, weapons, and luxury goods originating from at least 7 different ancient cultures: Egypt, Cyprus, Canaan, Mesopotamia, Mycenaean Greece, and others. This single vessel demonstrated something historians had long underestimated. Ancient civilizations were already participating in an international trading network spanning thousands of miles. Ideas traveled with goods. Languages mixed. Technologies spread. The ancient world was far more interconnected than anyone previously believed. Then came another astonishing discovery. Along the coast of Israel, divers uncovered the remains of submerged harbors dating back thousands of years. Stone anchors rested where sailors dropped them in antiquity. Massive harbor walls still stood beneath the waves. Some ports disappeared not because civilizations collapsed, but because sea levels slowly rose after the last ice age. Entire coastal communities vanished beneath the Mediterranean, hidden underwater, preserved for future generations to discover. Perhaps the greatest maritime mystery of all lies much farther back in time. Around 60,000 years ago, modern humans somehow reached Australia. Even during periods of lower sea levels, at least 60 miles of open ocean separated Southeast Asia from the Australian continent. There was never a complete land bridge, which means one extraordinary fact becomes unavoidable. The first Australians arrived by sea. No written records exist. No boats survived. Yet humans crossed dangerous waters tens of thousands of years before the invention of metal tools. How? Researchers continue debating the answer. Some suggest simple bamboo rafts. Others propose surprisingly sophisticated wooden vessels. Whatever they used, it worked. And not just once. Entire communities crossed successfully. Families, children, supplies, knowledge. The journey permanently changed human history. It also demonstrates something profound. Exploration did not begin with famous European voyages. It began tens of thousands of years earlier. Another mystery comes from the island of Crete. Stone tools discovered there appear to be more than 130,000 years old. But Crete has been surrounded by water for millions of years, if these dates are correct. Someone reached the island long before Homo sapiens spread across Europe. Could earlier human species have mastered seafaring? The evidence remains controversial. Yet every new excavation forces researchers to reconsider assumptions once considered unquestionable. Technology is helping reveal even more. Sonar mapping now identifies ancient shipwrecks hidden beneath deep sediment. Robotic submarines descend thousands of feet where human divers cannot safely reach. Each expedition uncovers forgotten cargoes, lost anchors, preserved wooden hulls, and sometimes ships so perfectly sealed by mud that organic materials survive for millennia. Every wreck becomes a time capsule. Frozen at the exact moment disaster struck. Half-loaded cargo, cooking utensils, personal belongings, tools abandoned exactly where ancient sailors last touched them. History interrupted in an instant. Perhaps the most remarkable lesson these discoveries teach is this: ancient people were never trapped by geography. Rivers connected civilizations. Oceans connected continents. Long before maps existed, humans explored the unknown simply because curiosity pushed them forward. They crossed dangerous waters without knowing what waited beyond the horizon. Every successful voyage expanded humanity's understanding of the world. Every failure disappeared beneath the sea. Some researchers estimate that thousands of undiscovered ancient shipwrecks still rest beneath oceans, lakes, and rivers around the globe. Many remain perfectly preserved, their stories untold, their cargo untouched, waiting silently beneath layers of sand and darkness. And if ancient sailors mastered the seas far earlier than anyone expected, what other technologies may have existed long before recorded history? Because the next mystery pushes imagination even further. It tells of machines that were said to fly through the skies, descriptions preserved in ancient texts so strange that they continue to spark debate among historians, engineers, and dreamers alike. People have dreamed of flying for as long as stories have existed. Long before airplanes, helicopters, or rockets, ancient civilizations filled their myths with machines that could soar through the sky. To modern readers, these stories often sound like fantasy. Gods riding fiery chariots across the heavens, heroes traveling between worlds, flying palaces carrying kings through the clouds. But every so often, historians come across descriptions that seem strangely mechanical, not magical, engineered. Could these simply be poetic metaphors? Or do they preserve fragments of forgotten technology that we still don't fully understand? One of the most debated examples comes from ancient India. Hidden within Sanskrit epics such as the Ramayana and the Mahabharata are repeated references to mysterious flying vehicles called vimanas. These machines are described in remarkable detail. Some are portrayed as magnificent palaces floating through the sky. Others resemble chariots capable of moving in any direction. Several accounts describe them traveling not only across great distances on Earth, but even into the heavens. Unlike ordinary mythological creatures, vimanas are often presented as vehicles with specific features. Some texts mention windows. Others describe multiple levels inside the craft. Several accounts claim they produced loud sounds during flight. Some even speak of brilliant lights surrounding them. To believers, these descriptions suggest that ancient civilizations possessed advanced technology long before recorded history. To most historians, however, the explanation is far less dramatic. The majority view is that these are literary creations. Ancient poets often described divine transportation using the most impressive imagery imaginable. Flying machines represented power, freedom, and the ability of gods to move between earthly and heavenly realms. Still, certain passages continue to attract attention because of how unusually technical they appear. One controversial manuscript frequently mentioned in these discussions is the Vaimanika Shastra. The document claims to describe ancient aircraft, including construction methods, metals, propulsion systems, and flight techniques. For decades, some enthusiasts argued that it proved ancient Indians understood aviation. Scientific investigation tells a different story. Studies indicate that the manuscript was written in the early 20th century rather than in antiquity. Engineers who analyzed its proposed aircraft concluded that the designs would not actually fly. In other words, while fascinating from a cultural perspective, it is not considered evidence of ancient aerospace engineering. Yet the mystery surrounding Vimanas refuses to disappear, because the older epics themselves are undeniably ancient. Why did multiple generations preserve such vivid descriptions of flying vehicles? Perhaps they simply reflected humanity's timeless dream of conquering the skies. Or perhaps they symbolized spiritual journeys beyond ordinary human experience. Ancient cultures often expressed philosophical ideas through dramatic imagery. A flying chariot could represent enlightenment just as easily as transportation. Across the world, similar stories emerge. In Greek mythology, the inventor Daedalus crafted wings from feathers and wax, allowing himself and his son Icarus to escape imprisonment. The lesson, of course, was not about engineering. It warned against arrogance. Icarus flew too close to the sun. The wax melted. He fell into the sea. The myth has survived for thousands of years because it speaks to ambition, curiosity, and the dangers of ignoring natural limits. China also preserved legends of remarkable flying devices. Some ancient texts describe enormous kites capable of carrying people. Unlike mythical flying chariots, these may actually contain historical truth. Chinese inventors developed sophisticated kite technology over 2,000 years ago. Historical records suggest large kites were occasionally used for military observation, signaling, and even limited human flight under carefully controlled conditions. What begins as legend sometimes turns out to contain surprising reality. Perhaps the most famous mechanical mystery from antiquity comes not from the sky, but from a small Greek island. In 1901, sponge divers recovered a heavily corroded lump of bronze from an ancient shipwreck near Antikythera. At first glance, it appeared worthless. Then researchers cleaned it. Hidden inside were dozens of interlocking gears. The object became known as the Antikythera mechanism. Modern imaging revealed something astonishing. This was not a simple device. It was an extraordinarily sophisticated analog computer built more than 2,000 years ago. Its gears accurately predicted eclipses, tracked planetary movements, followed lunar cycles, and calculated astronomical events with astonishing precision. Nothing comparable appeared again in Europe for well over 1,000 years. The discovery shocked historians. If ancient engineers possessed enough mathematical knowledge to build something this advanced, what else might they have created? The Antikythera mechanism reminds us of an important lesson. Ancient technology often exceeded our expectations. Civilizations sometimes developed knowledge that was later lost, only to be rediscovered centuries afterward. Concrete used by the Romans continues to puzzle engineers because many ancient structures remain remarkably durable. Greek fire, the mysterious Byzantine weapon capable of burning even on water, has never been fully recreated. Damascus steel produced blades of extraordinary quality, using techniques that remain only partially understood. History is not always a straight line. Knowledge can disappear. Libraries burn. Empires collapse. Craftsmanship fades. Generations forget what earlier civilizations once mastered. That does not mean ancient people possessed airplanes. There is no credible archaeological evidence supporting powered flight in antiquity. No engines, no airfields, no surviving aircraft, no physical remains demonstrating such technology. But it does remind us that human ingenuity has repeatedly surprised us. Ideas often appear far earlier than expected. Dreams inspire inventions centuries before technology catches up. Perhaps the stories of flying machines reveal less about forgotten engineering and more about something timeless within human nature. The desire to reach beyond known limits, to see what lies beyond the horizon, to touch the sky. Thousands of years before the Wright brothers lifted into the air, people had already imagined doing exactly that. Sometimes imagination becomes the blueprint for future reality. And while ancient flying machines remain trapped between myth and history, the next mystery concerns something entirely real. A physician whose surgical knowledge was so astonishingly advanced that many of his techniques would not be fully appreciated until thousands of years later. His discoveries transformed medicine. Yet most people have never heard his name. For most of history, people measured the world using whatever was available. One merchant filled a sack using his own wooden scoop. Another used a different one. One builder measured a wall using the length of his arm. Another measured with a rope that had stretched over time. Weights varied from city to city. Distances changed from kingdom to kingdom. Even coins with the same name often contained different amounts of precious metal. Imagine trying to build a bridge, trade across continents, or construct a temple when everyone follows a different system. It sounds impossible. Yet ancient civilizations somehow managed to create monuments so precise that even modern engineers remain impressed. How? The answer may lie in one of the least celebrated achievements in human history: standardization. It is not as dramatic as pyramids, not as mysterious as hidden caves, not as legendary as lost cities. But without it, none of those wonders could have existed. Long before the invention of factories or assembly lines, ancient societies began creating systems that ensured different people could build, trade, and communicate using exactly the same rules. This quiet revolution transformed civilization forever. One of the earliest examples appears in the remarkable cities of the Indus Valley civilization. More than 4,000 years ago, thriving urban centers, such as Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa, stretched across what is now Pakistan and northwestern India. When archaeologists began excavating these cities, they expected to find the usual variety of building styles seen in many ancient settlements. Instead, they found something astonishing. The bricks were almost identical. Whether researchers examined houses hundreds of miles apart or structures built generations apart, the proportions remained remarkably consistent. Again and again, builders used the same ratio: 1 unit high, 2 units wide, 4 units long. It sounds simple, but this level of consistency required planning, communication, and strict quality control across an enormous civilization. Thousands of workers, countless brickmakers, multiple cities, all following the same measurements. This was not coincidence. It was organization. The mystery deepened when archaeologists uncovered stone weights scattered throughout Indus Valley marketplaces. At first glance, they appeared ordinary, small polished stones of various sizes. But careful analysis revealed an elegant mathematical pattern. Each weight followed a standardized progression based on precise multiples. Merchants separated by hundreds of miles could exchange goods confidently because everyone agreed on the same system. Imagine buying grain today if every grocery store invented its own kilogram. Trade would collapse almost instantly. The people of the Indus Valley understood this over 4 millennia ago. Their civilization functioned because trust was built into measurement itself. Even their streets reflected careful planning. Cities followed organized grid systems. Drainage channels maintained remarkably consistent dimensions. Water management systems connected homes with astonishing precision. Everything suggests a civilization that valued order above chaos. Yet one question remains: who enforced these standards? No massive palaces dominate the archaeological sites. No giant royal tombs reveal powerful kings issuing commands. Unlike Egypt or Mesopotamia, the Indus Valley left surprisingly little evidence of centralized rulers. Some historians believe local administrators coordinated these systems. Others suggest cooperation emerged through shared cultural traditions rather than strict political control. The truth remains uncertain, but their achievements speak for themselves. Standardization also shaped another remarkable civilization: ancient Egypt. The construction of the pyramids required extraordinary precision. Millions of limestone blocks needed to fit together with astonishing accuracy. Small errors repeated thousands of times would have produced catastrophic structural failures. Instead, many joints remain so tight that even today it is difficult to insert a thin blade between certain stones. Egyptian builders relied upon carefully maintained measuring rods known as royal cubits. These standardized rulers ensured architects, surveyors, and craftsmen worked using identical measurements. The royal cubit became one of history's earliest official units of length. Copies were carefully preserved. Officials regularly checked local measuring tools against master standards. In effect, they created ancient quality control. The Romans expanded these ideas even further. Their roads stretched across continents. Aqueducts transported water for dozens of miles while maintaining remarkably gentle gradients. Military camps followed standardized layouts. Weapons, armor, building materials, engineering components, all increasingly relied upon consistent specifications. Standardization allowed the Roman Empire to function efficiently across enormous distances. A soldier transferred from Britain to Syria could still recognize familiar equipment. An engineer arriving in North Africa understood road construction techniques used throughout the empire. Shared measurements became a hidden language connecting millions of people. Perhaps the most surprising example appears in ancient China. During the Qin dynasty over 2,000 years ago, Emperor Qin Shi Huang unified numerous competing states into a single empire. But military conquest alone was not enough. Each former kingdom possessed different writing styles, different currencies, different axle widths for carts, different measurements. Travel and trade became unnecessarily complicated. So the emperor introduced sweeping reforms. Weights became standardized. Coins became standardized. Written characters became standardized. Even the width between cartwheels became standardized, so every vehicle could fit the same roads. These changes dramatically improved communication, commerce, and transportation across China. The empire functioned because everyone operated according to shared rules. Today, we rarely think about such systems. Every electrical outlet follows standardized dimensions. Every shipping container fits global transport networks. Aircraft components are manufactured to exact specifications. The internet itself depends on standardized protocols, allowing billions of devices to communicate seamlessly. Much of modern civilization operates because strangers agree upon identical measurements. Ancient builders understood this long before modern science explained it. Their greatest invention was not a machine. It was agreement. Agreement on how long something should be, how heavy it should weigh, how large each brick should become. These invisible rules built visible wonders, and perhaps that is why their monuments continue standing today. Because precision survives. Chaos rarely does. Yet one remarkable mystery remains. Among the countless inventions ancient civilizations gave the world, one began as a simple board game. Over centuries, it evolved into one of humanity's greatest tests of intelligence, a game capable of simulating war, strategy, sacrifice, and the endless battle between order and chaos. Its origins remain surprisingly mysterious, and its true creator may never be known. Discovering that one of the world's most beloved games may actually preserve the memory of an ancient civilization. A simple board. 64 squares. Pieces that march, defend, sacrifice, and conquer. Millions of people have played chess for centuries, believing it to be nothing more than a brilliant strategy game. But what if its origins reach far deeper into history than we realize? What if every move on the board echoes forgotten kingdoms, ancient wars, and ideas that survived while entire empires disappeared? Archaeologists, historians, and linguists have spent generations trying to answer one deceptively simple question. Where did chess truly begin? The answer is anything but straightforward. The trail stretches across deserts, royal courts, lost manuscripts, and civilizations separated by thousands of miles. Like so many ancient mysteries, every clue seems to open another door instead of closing the case. The earliest widely accepted ancestor of chess is known as Chaturanga, a game believed to have appeared in India around the 6th century AD. The name itself means 4 divisions of the military, referring to infantry, cavalry, elephants, and chariots. These 4 military branches formed the backbone of ancient Indian armies. Instead of random pieces, each figure represented a real element of warfare. The board became a battlefield where strategy often mattered more than strength. Yet even Chaturanga raises difficult questions. No complete original rulebook has survived. Historians reconstruct the game by comparing scattered references in ancient literature, fragments of later manuscripts, and descriptions written hundreds of years after its invention. That leaves enormous gaps. We know the pieces existed, but exactly how they moved remains uncertain. Different scholars propose different reconstructions, and each theory changes our understanding of how the game evolved. Some researchers believe Chaturanga itself may not have been the beginning. Ancient board games existed long before India recorded this version. Egypt had Senet more than 5,000 years ago. Mesopotamia produced the royal game of Ur. China developed games involving military formations and territory. Persia, Greece, and Rome all enjoyed strategic board games with unique rules. Could chess have borrowed ideas from several civilizations instead of appearing fully formed in one place? The mystery becomes even deeper when we examine how quickly the game spread. Within only a few centuries, chaturanga appears to have crossed into Persia, where it became known as shatranj. Persian nobles embraced the game with enthusiasm. Courts organized matches between scholars, generals, and princes. Winning required not only intelligence but patience, calculation, and the ability to think many moves ahead. These were exactly the qualities admired in rulers. It was in Persia that many familiar chess terms first appeared. The word Shah meant king. When the king faced unavoidable capture, players declared Shah Mat. Today we know it as checkmate. Most people assume the phrase means the king is dead, but linguists argue that its original meaning was closer to the king is helpless or the king is defeated. Even one of the game's most famous words carries linguistic mysteries that scholars still debate. Then history intervened. During the 7th century, the Islamic expansion absorbed Persia into a rapidly growing empire. Instead of disappearing, shatranj traveled farther than ever before. Muslim scholars carried it across North Africa, into Spain, throughout the Middle East, and along trade routes reaching Central Asia. Merchants packed small folding boards beside silk, spices, and precious metals. Wherever knowledge traveled, the game followed. Remarkably, religious attitudes toward chess varied. Some rulers viewed it as an educational exercise that sharpened the mind. Others feared it encouraged gambling or distracted believers from spiritual duties. Certain periods saw temporary bans, while others celebrated famous champions. The game's survival depended on changing political climates, yet it endured through every shift. When chess reached medieval Europe, it transformed again. European craftsmen redesigned the pieces to reflect their own society. Elephants became bishops. Chariots evolved into castles or rooks. Advisors became queens. Even the rules changed dramatically. During the late 15th century, the queen gained extraordinary mobility, becoming the most powerful piece on the board. Historians sometimes call this transformation the birth of modern chess. Why was the queen strengthened? No one knows for certain. Some suggest it reflected the growing political influence of powerful queens, such as Isabella of Castile. Others believe the faster movement simply made games more exciting. Whatever the reason, one rule change permanently altered the game's balance and strategy. As chess spread through Europe, it became more than entertainment. Kings used it to train military thinking. Monasteries preserved books explaining advanced tactics. Universities encouraged students to master the game as an exercise in logic. Paintings began depicting nobles gathered around beautifully carved boards. Chess had become a symbol of intelligence and refinement. But hidden within this familiar history are puzzles that continue to intrigue researchers. Several medieval manuscripts describe legendary players whose abilities seem almost impossible. Some accounts claim masters could play multiple games simultaneously without seeing any of the boards. Others describe blindfold exhibitions centuries before modern psychology explained exceptional memory. Were these stories exaggerated, or did ancient players develop astonishing mental techniques now largely forgotten? Archaeologists have uncovered beautifully crafted chess pieces in places where historians did not expect them. Viking settlements produced exquisitely carved ivory pieces. Ancient trading ports yielded sets influenced by Islamic artistry. Remote monasteries preserved boards decorated with symbols from entirely different cultures. Every discovery reminds researchers that ideas often traveled farther than written history suggests. One of the most famous finds emerged on Scotland's Isle of Lewis in the 19th century. Buried beneath the sand were dozens of intricately carved medieval chess pieces made from walrus ivory. No one knows exactly why they were hidden. Were they part of a merchant's cargo? A nobleman's collection? Or were they concealed during a conflict and never recovered? Even today, their journey remains uncertain. The deeper historians investigate chess, the more they realize the game reflects human civilization itself. Every region added new ideas without completely erasing older traditions. Ancient military tactics became intellectual puzzles. Religious symbolism mixed with political power. Artistic styles blended across continents. A simple board game quietly recorded thousands of years of cultural exchange. Perhaps that is why chess feels timeless. Unlike monuments that crumble or libraries that burn, knowledge embedded within a game can survive by being played. Every generation teaches the next, often without realizing they are preserving fragments of ancient history. Even modern computers have transformed the mystery. Artificial intelligence analyzes millions of positions within seconds, uncovering strategies that humans overlooked for centuries. Yet despite all this computational power, AI cannot answer the oldest question of all. Who first imagined placing armies onto a checkered board and turning war into thought? Maybe the inventor's name vanished long ago. Maybe it belonged not to one person but to countless minds refining the game across generations. Like language itself, chess may have evolved slowly until no single creator could be identified. That uncertainty is exactly what makes the story so captivating. Behind every opening move lies the shadow of forgotten kingdoms. Behind every checkmate echoes centuries of human ingenuity. Long before satellites, computers, or modern science, people discovered that the greatest battles could be fought not with swords, but with ideas. Have you ever stopped to wonder how ancient civilizations managed to communicate across vast distances without electricity, satellites, telephones, or even paper maps? Imagine standing on a lonely mountain thousands of years ago. The sun is setting. Suddenly, a fire ignites on the peak dozens of miles away. Moments later, another flame appears beyond that one. Then another. Within minutes, a message has crossed an entire kingdom faster than the fastest horse could ever ride. Long before radio waves filled the skies, people had already mastered the art of sending information across enormous distances. The methods they created were surprisingly sophisticated, and some of them remain so mysterious that historians still debate exactly how they worked. Every forgotten signal tower, abandoned hilltop fortress, and weathered beacon tells the story of civilizations that refused to let geography limit communication. Communication has always meant survival. A kingdom that learned about an invading army first often won the war before the battle even began. Merchants depended on news of safe roads. Farmers needed warnings of floods. Rulers demanded immediate reports from distant provinces. Waiting weeks for a messenger could mean disaster. Ancient societies understood that speed could decide the fate of entire nations. One of the earliest systems relied on something humanity had controlled for hundreds of thousands of years: fire. At night, flames became visible from incredible distances. During the day, thick columns of smoke carried messages across valleys and mountains. By carefully arranging the number, timing, or pattern of these signals, observers could communicate surprisingly complex information. The ancient Chinese developed enormous beacon tower networks, stretching along defensive walls and mountain passes. Soldiers stationed inside these towers watched neighboring outposts day and night. The moment enemy forces appeared, smoke signals rose into the sky. Each station repeated the signal, allowing warnings to travel hundreds of miles within only a few hours. Historical records suggest that, under ideal conditions, information moved faster through this network than many armies themselves. Different materials produced different colors and densities of smoke. Dry grass, damp wood, straw, and animal dung all created unique visual signatures. Combined with predetermined codes, a single tower could transmit more than a simple warning. It could estimate enemy numbers, direction of travel, or urgency. What appears primitive to modern eyes was actually an organized communication system requiring discipline, planning, and remarkable coordination. Ancient Greece developed another fascinating approach. According to historical accounts, engineers created an alphabetic signaling system using torches. Instead of sending only one basic message, operators held torches in carefully arranged positions corresponding to rows and columns of a coded alphabet. Observers on distant hills recorded the signals and translated them into individual letters. If the descriptions are accurate, this method allowed messages to include names, locations, and specific instructions rather than simple alarms. It was slow compared to modern technology, but revolutionary for its time. Some historians even describe it as an early optical telegraph. Perhaps the most legendary signal ever recorded concerns the fall of Troy. Ancient playwrights described how beacon fires carried news of the city's destruction across Greece in a single night. Beginning near the ruins of Troy, flames supposedly leaped from mountain to mountain until they reached the palace at Mycenae. Whether the story reflects actual history or literary symbolism remains uncertain. Yet archaeologists have identified many hilltop locations where such beacon chains would have been physically possible. The Roman Empire expanded these ideas even further. Covering millions of square miles, Rome required constant communication between distant provinces. While couriers remained essential, signal stations supplemented the empire's vast road system. Fortresses built along frontiers often maintained visual contact with neighboring outposts, allowing rapid military coordination during emergencies. But light and smoke were not the only tools available. Across the Andes Mountains, the Inca civilization created one of history's fastest messenger systems without using either wheels or horses. Instead, highly trained runners known as chasquis sprinted along mountain roads carrying knotted cords called quipu and spoken messages. Relay stations positioned every few miles allowed exhausted runners to hand information to fresh messengers waiting ahead. Modern experiments suggest these relay systems could transport information nearly 150 miles in a single day across some of Earth's most difficult terrain. Even Spanish conquerors expressed amazement at the speed with which the Inca emperor received news from distant provinces. The quipu itself remains one of archaeology's greatest puzzles. Thousands have survived, each consisting of colored cords tied into intricate knots. Researchers know they recorded numerical information such as taxes and census data. Yet many scholars suspect the knots may also encode language itself. If that theory proves correct, the quipu would represent a completely unique writing system unlike anything else ever developed. Decoding it has challenged linguists for decades. Every newly discovered specimen offers fresh clues, but the complete secret remains hidden. Elsewhere, communication took even stranger forms. Across Africa, enormous talking drums carried messages through dense forests where visual signals were impossible. These drums did not merely announce simple rhythms. Skilled drummers imitated the tones and patterns of spoken languages, allowing listeners miles away to understand surprisingly detailed information. European explorers initially dismissed the practice as music until they realized villages were responding to information they could not possibly have received by ordinary means. Anthropologists later confirmed that experienced drummers truly could transmit recognizable phrases over remarkable distances. In the Middle East and Mediterranean, pigeons became another extraordinary communication tool. Carefully trained birds naturally returned to their home lofts after release. Civilizations including Egypt, Persia, Greece, and Rome exploited this instinct by attaching tiny written messages to the birds' legs. Military commanders reported victories. Merchants monitored market prices. Governments exchanged urgent intelligence. Thousands of years before wireless communication, information literally flew across the skies. Yet one of the greatest mysteries involves technologies we may never fully understand. Several ancient civilizations built towers, temples, and monuments aligned with astonishing precision. Some researchers wonder whether these structures served not only religious or astronomical purposes, but also communication functions. Their elevated positions, clear sight lines, and repeated architectural patterns raise intriguing possibilities. Most mainstream archaeologists remain cautious. There is no direct evidence proving these monuments formed organized signaling networks. Still, the idea continues to inspire investigation because ancient engineers repeatedly demonstrated capabilities once considered impossible. Then there are acoustic mysteries. At certain archaeological sites, whispers travel extraordinary distances. A person standing in one specific location can hear conversations occurring far away, while nearby listeners hear almost nothing. Engineers studying these effects often conclude they result from deliberate architectural design rather than coincidence. Did ancient builders intentionally exploit sound for ceremonies, security, or communication? Some structures certainly appear to manipulate echoes in unusual ways. Whether this knowledge extended into organized communication systems remains an open question. Even today, researchers continue discovering forgotten watchtowers hidden beneath forests, buried beacon stations overlooking ancient coastlines, and abandoned relay posts along mountain ridges. Satellite imaging has revealed communication routes invisible from ground level, connecting landscapes once thought isolated. Every discovery reminds us that ancient people solved problems using creativity rather than technology. Without electricity, they harnessed light. Without radios, they mastered visibility. Without computers, they memorized elaborate codes. Without engines, they built human networks capable of astonishing speed. Perhaps the greatest lesson is that intelligence is not measured by modern machines, but by the ability to adapt. Faced with immense distances, ancient civilizations created systems elegant enough to serve entire empires for centuries. Today, billions of invisible radio signals race around the globe every second. We rarely stop to think that our endless stream of digital communication began with simple flames flickering atop lonely mountains. But communication is only one way humanity preserves knowledge. There is another, even more remarkable method. Some memories are not carried by fire, drums, or runners. They survive inside the human mind itself, passed from generation to generation through stories so powerful that they outlive kingdoms, languages, and even civilizations. And in the next chapter, we explore how memory became one of the greatest technologies the ancient world ever created. What if the greatest library ever created wasn't built from stone shelves or scrolls, but inside the human mind? Imagine living in a world where every law, every legend, every medical treatment, every map of the stars, and every family history exists only because someone remembers it. One forgotten sentence could erase generations of knowledge forever. One storyteller could preserve the identity of an entire civilization. Long before books filled libraries and hard drives stored unimaginable amounts of data, memory itself was humanity's most valuable technology. Ancient cultures developed astonishing methods to remember thousands upon thousands of details with incredible accuracy. Some of these techniques are still studied today, while others remain mysterious, leaving historians wondering just how much knowledge vanished when the last keepers of those traditions disappeared. Modern people often assume memory was unreliable before writing. Surprisingly, evidence suggests the opposite. In societies where written records were rare or non-existent, memory became a skill trained from childhood. Entire communities depended on individuals whose sole responsibility was preserving history. Forgetting was not simply embarrassing. It could mean losing sacred rituals, legal traditions, or scientific observations accumulated over centuries. Perhaps the most famous example comes from ancient Greece. Before the widespread use of books, poets known as rhapsodes could recite enormous epic poems from beginning to end. The Iliad alone contains nearly 16,000 lines. The Odyssey adds another 12,000. Together, they total far more words than many modern novels. Yet performers delivered these works from memory before audiences that knew every verse well enough to notice mistakes. How is that possible? Researchers believe these storytellers relied on carefully structured patterns. Repeated phrases, rhythmic language, and recurring descriptions acted like mental anchors. Heroes were almost always introduced with familiar titles. The sea was repeatedly described in the same poetic language. Dawn arrived using identical imagery. These repetitions were not signs of poor creativity. They were sophisticated memory tools allowing performers to reconstruct enormous narratives with astonishing consistency. Ancient India developed perhaps an even more extraordinary tradition. For thousands of years, sacred texts known as the Vedas were transmitted entirely through oral recitation. Teachers instructed students for decades, requiring absolute precision. Every sound, every pause, every tone had to remain unchanged. To ensure accuracy, scholars invented multiple methods of chanting the same passages. One version moved forward through the text. Another repeated words in reverse order. Others rearranged phrases according to elaborate mathematical patterns. If even one syllable differed, students immediately recognized the mistake. Modern linguists studying these traditions have reached an astonishing conclusion. Some orally transmitted Vedic texts remained virtually unchanged for more than 2,000 years before being written down. That level of accuracy rivals, and sometimes exceeds, handwritten copying. Across Australia, Aboriginal communities developed another remarkable system known today as songlines. These were far more than songs. They served as maps, histories, laws, religious teachings, and survival guides woven into memorable musical journeys. A traveler could cross hundreds of miles simply by following the sequence of verses. Each landmark corresponded to a particular lyric. Mountains, rivers, watering holes, and sacred sites formed part of a giant mental landscape encoded through music. Forgetting the song could mean becoming hopelessly lost in one of Earth's harshest environments. Similar techniques appeared across Polynesia. Navigators crossed thousands of miles of open ocean without compasses or modern instruments. Instead, they memorized the movement of stars, ocean swells, bird migrations, cloud formations, and seasonal winds. Some master navigators reportedly carried entire oceans inside their memories. They recognized invisible wave patterns reflecting from distant islands beyond the horizon. They knew which stars marked specific directions during different months. Their knowledge astonished European explorers who struggled to understand how people could repeatedly find tiny islands across the vast Pacific. Archaeologists now recognize these navigational traditions as among humanity's greatest intellectual achievements. The ancient Celts also relied heavily on trained memory specialists. Druids reportedly spent decades memorizing religious teachings, legal systems, genealogies, and philosophical traditions. Roman writers claimed some students trained for 20 years before completing their education. Curiously, Druids deliberately avoided writing many sacred teachings down. Why? Some historians believe they feared written records would weaken memory itself. Others argue secrecy protected important knowledge from enemies. Whatever the reason, much of their wisdom disappeared after Roman conquest because it existed almost entirely within human minds. This pattern repeats throughout history. The burning of famous libraries often receives enormous attention, yet many civilizations never depended primarily on books. Their greatest archives walked, spoke, and breathed. When disease, war, or conquest destroyed communities, priceless knowledge vanished forever. One striking example involves the indigenous peoples of the Americas. Before European arrival, countless oral traditions described volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, tsunamis, and changing coastlines. For generations, these stories were dismissed as myths. Then geology began confirming them. Some Aboriginal Australian traditions accurately describe coastlines that existed more than 7,000 years ago before rising sea levels flooded them. Native American legends preserve surprisingly detailed memories of volcanic eruptions now confirmed through geological evidence. Oral history, once considered unreliable folklore, sometimes proved to be an astonishing historical archive. Scientists have become increasingly interested in how ancient people organized such immense quantities of information. One powerful method is known today as the memory palace. Although commonly associated with Greek scholars, the technique likely evolved independently in multiple cultures. The idea is simple, yet brilliant. Instead of memorizing isolated facts, a person imagines placing each piece of information inside a familiar building or landscape. Walking mentally through that location allows the information to be retrieved in sequence. Modern neuroscience confirms that this method dramatically improves recall because the human brain naturally remembers places exceptionally well. Competitive memory champions still use variations of this ancient strategy today to memorize thousands of numbers, entire decks of cards, and lengthy texts. Yet perhaps the greatest mystery is not how memory worked, but how much has disappeared. How many scientific observations vanished because the final storyteller died without an apprentice? How many medical treatments were forgotten after entire communities disappeared? How many languages, each containing unique ways of understanding reality, were silenced forever? Every lost civilization may represent not only destroyed buildings, but also invisible libraries erased without leaving physical traces. Even today, researchers race to record endangered languages spoken by only a handful of elderly speakers. With every language lost, unique knowledge about plants, animals, weather, astronomy, and history often disappears alongside it. Ironically, modern technology has made remembering less necessary. Smartphones store phone numbers. Search engines answer questions instantly. Digital calendars remind us where to be. We possess more information than any previous generation, yet rely less on our own memories than perhaps any civilization before us. Ancient people had no such luxury. Their minds were their archives. Their stories were their books. Their voices were the bridges connecting one generation to the next. The remarkable truth is that civilization was not built only with stone, bronze, or iron. It was built with memory. And that memory carried humanity through thousands of years until writing finally began preserving knowledge in permanent form. But once writing spread across the ancient world, another invention quietly transformed everyday life forever. It allowed people not only to record knowledge, but to continue reading and learning, even as age slowly weakened their vision. Have you ever wondered how many of history's greatest ideas almost disappeared? Not because they were forgotten, but because the people who carried them simply could no longer see? Imagine spending your entire life studying ancient scrolls, copying manuscripts by candlelight, or calculating the movements of the stars, only to have your vision slowly fade as you grew older. For thousands of years, this was an unavoidable reality. Wisdom often came with age, but age came with failing eyesight. Entire libraries depended on elderly scholars whose eyes could no longer distinguish tiny letters carved onto parchment. Then, somewhere in history, a deceptively simple invention changed everything. Two carefully shaped pieces of glass gave humanity something priceless: the ability to continue learning long after nature said it was time to stop. Yet the story of eyeglasses is filled with mysteries. Who truly invented them? How did ancient civilizations discover that transparent stones could bend light? And were people experimenting with optical technology far earlier than historians once believed? The history of vision correction begins long before glasses rested comfortably on anyone's nose. Thousands of years ago, people already noticed strange optical effects in nature. Looking through drops of water sometimes made objects appear larger. Smooth crystals occasionally distorted or magnified whatever lay beneath them. At first, these effects probably seemed magical rather than scientific. One remarkable artifact continues to fascinate researchers today. It is known as the Nimrud lens, a carefully polished piece of rock crystal discovered inside the ruins of the ancient Assyrian city of Nimrud. The object is nearly 3,000 years old. Some scholars believe it served as nothing more than decorative jewelry. Others argue it may have functioned as a primitive magnifying glass. The debate has lasted for decades because the crystal is capable of enlarging small objects, although not perfectly. If craftsmen truly used it to inspect intricate carvings or tiny inscriptions, then experiments with optical magnification began centuries earlier than traditionally believed. Ancient Egypt provides another intriguing clue. Wall paintings often depict artisans performing astonishingly detailed work on jewelry, statues, and delicate decorations. How did aging craftsmen maintain such extraordinary precision? No surviving texts describe eyeglasses, yet some historians wonder whether polished crystals or water-filled vessels occasionally assisted close work. Direct evidence remains elusive, but the question refuses to disappear. The ancient Greeks took optical observations much further. Philosophers including Euclid studied the behavior of light, attempting to understand how vision itself functioned. Some believed rays emerged from the eyes toward objects. Others argued light entered the eyes from the outside world. While many of their conclusions proved incorrect, these debates laid the foundations for centuries of optical research. Then came one of history's greatest scientific minds. During the 2nd century, the physician Galen examined the anatomy of the human eye in remarkable detail. His writings dominated medical understanding for over 1,000 years. Although he did not invent eyeglasses, his work inspired generations of scholars seeking to understand vision and its limitations. Meanwhile, across the Roman Empire, wealthy citizens sometimes used polished emeralds or quartz crystals while reading or observing performances. One famous story claims that Emperor Nero watched gladiator contests through a polished emerald. Historians still debate whether this acted as a corrective lens, protection from sunlight, or simply a luxurious display of wealth. The truth remains uncertain. Following the decline of Rome, much classical scientific knowledge survived thanks largely to scholars in the Islamic world. During the Middle Ages, remarkable advances in optics emerged from cities such as Baghdad, Cairo, and Cordoba. Among the most influential scientists was Ibn al-Haytham, known in Europe as Al-Hazen. Around the 11th century, he transformed humanity's understanding of vision. Through careful experimentation, he demonstrated that light travels from objects into the eyes rather than the opposite. His monumental work, the Book of Optics, explained reflection, refraction, and image formation with extraordinary accuracy. Many historians believe his discoveries directly influenced the later invention of eyeglasses in Europe. Without understanding how lenses bend light, creating effective spectacles would have been nearly impossible. The first unquestionable evidence for wearable eyeglasses appears in northern Italy during the late 13th century. Exactly who invented them remains one of history's enduring mysteries. Several names have been proposed. Some traditions credit an Italian craftsman named Salvino d'Armate. Others argue that Dominican friar Alessandro della Spina deserves recognition for spreading the technology. Unfortunately, surviving documents are incomplete, contradictory, or written decades after the events themselves. Whoever first combined two convex lenses into a wearable frame probably had no idea they were changing civilization forever. These earliest spectacles looked very different from modern glasses. They had no arms extending behind the ears. Instead, users balanced them carefully on the bridge of the nose or held them in place by hand while reading. Despite their awkward design, they quickly became invaluable. Before eyeglasses, many scholars effectively retired once age weakened their close vision. Suddenly, experienced teachers, monks, physicians, and scribes could continue working for decades longer. The timing could hardly have been more important. Only a few centuries later, Johannes Gutenberg introduced the movable type printing press. Books became increasingly available across Europe. Literacy expanded rapidly. Universities flourished. Millions of newly printed pages required readers, and eyeglasses allowed countless aging scholars to keep learning instead of abandoning intellectual life. Some historians argue that spectacles quietly accelerated the scientific revolution itself. Imagine if Galileo had lost the ability to read calculations in old age. Imagine astronomers unable to examine detailed star charts or physicians incapable of studying anatomical diagrams. A simple optical device may have preserved enormous amounts of knowledge by extending productive lifetimes. As lens-making techniques improved, craftsmen discovered they could shape glass with astonishing precision. Soon, magnifying glasses assisted jewelers. Microscopes revealed invisible microorganisms. Telescopes transformed astronomy forever. Each breakthrough grew from humanity's increasing mastery over light. Ironically, the same principles allowing elderly readers to examine manuscripts also allowed scientists to observe distant galaxies and microscopic cells. One invention unlocked two entirely different universes. Yet mysteries remain. Archaeologists occasionally uncover polished crystal objects whose exact purpose remains uncertain. Were they decorative? Ritualistic? Or forgotten optical tools whose true function has vanished from memory? Some ancient lenses appear surprisingly sophisticated despite their age. Others display craftsmanship difficult to explain using the simplest available techniques. Researchers continue debating whether isolated experiments with magnification occurred independently across several civilizations long before wearable spectacles became common. If future discoveries reveal earlier optical technologies, textbooks may once again require revision. History repeatedly reminds us that inventions rarely appear overnight. They evolve slowly through countless observations, forgotten experiments, and accidental discoveries spread across generations. The story of eyeglasses perfectly illustrates this truth. A drop of water magnifying a leaf. A polished crystal enlarging a carved inscription. A philosopher questioning how vision works. A scientist studying the behavior of light. A craftsman grinding two pieces of glass into matching curves. Each step seemed small. Together, they allowed humanity to keep reading its own history. And that ability changed everything. Because once people could preserve knowledge across generations with greater ease, another challenge emerged. Civilizations needed a reliable way to organize time itself. Days became months. Months became years. Empires rose and fell according to carefully measured calendars that shaped agriculture, religion, exploration, and the rhythm of everyday life. In the final chapter, we uncover one of humanity's oldest and most influential mysteries. The remarkable history of calendars and how ancient civilizations learned to measure time with astonishing precision.